Okay, we have one of my typical short agendas, but they may take some time. Tina was able to get off 2 sets of minutes, and hopefully both of you have had a minute to take a look at them. We should vote on accepting one or both or none. So the first one is the meeting on March 30th. Any comments?
No, not for me. Both look good to me.
I make a motion, both.
And I second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, they're both passed. Have either of you had a chance to look at the attachment that I sent to you, I think yesterday? That was kind of the line items of topical categories that I wanted to use to put together a spreadsheet so that we could kind of summarize the information that we've acquired from the 6 interviews that we did.
Yeah, I looked at it, but I was still suffering from spectrum map shock.
We'll get to that.
So, I mean, I was trying to make heads or tails for it, and I kept trying to associate it with a spreadsheet, and I wasn't getting anywhere with it.
Yeah, I think the map's pretty concerning right at this point. I didn't think there was a lot of detail to it at all, but that's just me.
Right. Well, let's just spend a couple of minutes on this because I think unless I've done something really strange, probably knock this off in a few minutes. Elaine, how do I go about sharing an item? I mean, I've got a lot of things on my screen.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. Are you trying to share that map?
No, I'm trying to share. It's just a Word document, spreadsheet categories for describing ISP utility discussions with us.
Okay, so you have it up on your screen or you have it open?
I do.
Okay, so at the bottom or top of your screen right now, do you see that green box that says
I
share
do.
screen? Okay,
Yep.
click that. And then it
Oh,
should.
it gives me a choice.
Yeah, yep. And then just click that. Click the document you're trying to open. Hold on 1 second. We can't see it quite yet. Oh, well, look at you two. Yep, so we can see it. It's very small. We can see you and it must be your wife.
Nope.
Oh, no, okay.
No, she's a colleague from Paris who actually worked with me when I worked for a living.
Nice.
You don't need to explain to us. We're cool.
Sorry
I mean,
about that. Sorry, Ray.
You're talking to an open-minded,
a very sweet
guy
lady.
going to Bangalore. Oh.
Sorry, Ray.
This is getting away very, very early. You see it now?
Yep, I
Okay.
do.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you read it?
No.
Can't read it? Oh, heck.
All right, so if you go to, yep. Go to view.
I should have it on an email. I can just look at my email and have it, unless you made changes to it.
Right.
Okay. And now you can, do you see where it says a 100%? Oh yeah, that'll work too. Yeah.
See what happens here.
Okay, but now expand your screen again.
All right. How's
There you
that?
go.
Better.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay. So I assume y'all are familiar with spreadsheets and things like that. On the rows, we'd have each one of the each one of the ISPs or utilities. And if they had more than one particular business model that they proposed to us, then they'd have a couple of lines. The items that I thought might be useful to fill in would be the following. Does the ISP provide service to Perry today? Now, some of them do, some of them don't. The next one, do they all, or do any of them promise fiber to the premise? And again, some will, some won't. Another box is for other technology, and that's to accommodate Trail Runner probably more than any of the others. Because theirs is what, fixed wireless, I think it's called. And the next one says speed offerings and costs, residential and business. And I think they all provided cost information. Projected build time. It seems like a common theme is about a year. Are they affordable connectivity program eligible? Do they have RDOF footprints in Perry? Only one of them does. Are they willing to do grant writing on behalf of the town? And what is their present coverage in Perry? And that gets us to the map situation. In Perry own the infrastructure? And have they given us a high-level build cost estimate? Do they sound reasonable to you guys?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
item 10, Perry to own infrastructure, does that mean that the ISPs would build it and somehow we would pay the ISP to eventually own essentially just a fiber optic cable? Is that what item 10 is
Yes,
asking?
yes,
Okay.
it is. Yeah, I mean, that's basically the DBU model. In conjunction with the Pioneer, of course. And Pioneer would build the infrastructure. And we'd have to, I mean, that one there, I think mandates that we succeed in getting some sort of grant and then have to take out a loan to pay for the parts of the grant that are missing to pay for the whole build. But I think that, well, Down East, Spectrum and Consolidated have all, and Axiom now, have all said that they have the option of Perry owning the infrastructure. But the details are actually quite different from, among them. So that's why that type of information is going to have to be documented, and we're going to have to talk about that stuff. So you're happy with this?
Yeah, to me it looks good. Chris, if we get to this point, or when we get to this point, would you be providing guidance on each item as far as what the ISPs are providing us for answers and what's the advantage and disadvantages associated with their replies?
Oh yeah, if you guys want me to, I'm the basic sort of architectural questions and one versus the other, they're pretty similar in what would be offered. So yeah, more than happy to.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll try to get forward on this. I don't know how long it's going to take me.
Well, seems like you got a couple years before the grants come out, so.
If we do, I'm taking a vacation.
Oh, you know what, but it might be also a good question to add on to that. I mean, I don't know if it's the management infrastructure, but for example, Axiom. It seems like the CEO, it's a one-man show, and if we obligate to Axiom, and it seems like if anything happens to that CEO, what happens to Axiom? And that would be something, because again, we're looking at a minimum 10, 20-year commitment. So I think we need to look that far ahead as a town to see, how is their management infrastructure? If something happens to someone as critical as the CEO, is someone willing to step in?
So
Or is
I
that-
can just jump in really quickly and just say that Axiom is definitely not a one-man show.
Okay.
It's it's a full-fledged operation, definitely. So I'm not saying your concerns aren't valid. However, it is not like a fly-by-night organization at all.
No, yeah, that was my concern. I mean,
Oh.
I was impressed with his presentation. But he does everything, it seems like, from the grant writing. He's a very critical part of their operation. And even Pioneer Wireless, I don't know what their management infrastructure is. And that would be a concern to me if anything happens to someone like that, and us making a long-term commitment to that ISP, how would that impact us, meaning the town of Perry?
Yeah.
Because this is easily could be a 50-year commitment with the technology.
For the technology, maybe, not for me.
Not me either. I mean, I'm just looking to survive the Bangor trip.
Oh, yeah.
Just Chris,
Well, I
you
think that's
mentioned-
a valid question, and it probably applies to all the small companies, corporations that we're talking to. So duly noted.
For what it's worth, John, once these systems are kind of are in place, they can be kind of switched hands. These acquisitions happen all the time. Systems change hands, even on the large scale. I agree with you. Mark especially is very much the figurehead, and you do have the same thing with Tim McAfee at Pioneer. But they do have very good organizations behind them as well. But even as a standalone thing, if you guys wanted, the model changes as time goes on and you want to buy it or sell it, or somebody else comes in as the ISP, whatever. Once it's kind of there, there's not a lot to it. It's kind of like a vending machine. It's a pain in the ass to get your routes, and then once it's there, it's just a matter of keeping things running as long as you have decent network maintenance plans and things like that, which are organizational and not personality driven, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And from what I read about fiber optics versus the cable, the coaxes, there's so much less maintenance involved. The reliability, everything about it says that fiber optic is really a no-brainer when it comes to maintaining and reliability.
Yeah, the deployment of a fiber optic network, the engineering, things like that is like the heavy lift. It's kind of like that thing. And then once it's in place compared to a coax network, it is much less maintenance intensive. It's just an easier thing to keep running, and it can be run by less people. That's one of the reasons that the higher cost is offset over time, because it just takes less manpower, less trucks, less everything. And again, once it's kind of there, that's why you can plug and play and have multiple ISPs, if you want an open network and things like that. It's just simpler. But I mean, it's a valid concern. I wouldn't go too heavily into it. As long as you like the model, while you're going to be in business with whatever model that is, if you're going to be in partners with them, the relationship matters. But as far as the structure and the network and things like that, that piece is kind of self-sustaining.
Yeah, and maybe it's just I'm a little conservative because with Starlink, it's the CEO of Starlink concerns me, so I didn't know if that was the. But maybe I'm just a little gun shy, so don't worry about it. It's good.
I think the good thing is, at least in these cases, there's not one dude that can just flip a switch and turn it off. So
Yeah.
that's a concern. Yeah.
Okay. Now, shall we talk a little bit about the map that we got from Spectrum?
Yeah, I say talk.
There it is.
You're getting really good at this, Ray.
My short-term memory is still okay. But there's this big gap between the stuff that I've known for a long time and short-term. And when it gets in it's like the donut hole for Medicare. Things just go and disappear. Can you see? I can't see what you're seeing when I share from here. I just see the source material. Can you see the map?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Chris, did you have a chance to take a look at that map?
Yeah. How do I put this delicately? I don't really know what she was sending you. You know, I don't know what the context was. I don't know if Melinda's kind of, you know, higher level, so she's, you know, maybe not the person they should have interacting about at this level of things. There just seems to be a pretty good disconnect between the data that's involved normally around this time and what she's able to answer to, but I you know, don't have any answers as to why. My concern is that what's that?
She did offer us the opportunity to talk to her tech people.
Yeah, and that's probably where your conversations need to be. At least, you know, you don't need to speak to the chief engineer at this point, but you know, if you're going to be talking about what Spectrum's offering you, the problem that we run into a lot, and it's usually with the bigger players like a CCI, a Spectrum, a Comcast, you know, not providing their maps, and we all know why, because it enabled them to say that they had coverage where they didn't.
Right.
And that's fine. I get it. I respect people's business practices or whatever, if it's not hurting me. In this case, they're asking, you know, a town, a state, and the federal government to fund their builds. I don't know how that's not required that you basically present what you're building onto. So at some point they will have to, so that they can actually we can look at a map and it will just look like a road, but it'll be a line that says, here's our cable. And then you can actually use data. And it's a really simple thing. So I don't know what it takes to get there. I've never been through a process where you're trying to partner with an incumbent ISP like a Spectrum and trying to get any ground with them. The one thing I will say, Ray, is in your the spreadsheet earlier, you did mention that Spectrum would offer the option of owning infrastructure. That is not the case, and maybe I misunderstood. But there are no co-ownership models with Spectrum.
That's interesting because I thought Melinda said there were.
If they're throwing that pitch out there, that's a new one that I have not run across yet, and who knows? They're trying out everything in their bag of tricks right now. Where you would partner with Spectrum, to the best of my knowledge, and this is sort of true with CCI, but a little bit different model, and we'll stick to Spectrum in this case. They would essentially, I don't even really know what they're pitching at this point, other than the Reach Me grant program, which would extend their network to cover the, you know, non-covered homes right now. Right. That's not a partnership. They're the ones that request that grant from MCA. So there's, you know, I'm really not sure what they're pitching at this point. As far as the map itself goes, if you want to start sharing, I'll show you guys, you know, kind of a basic layout that kind of gives you a better picture of what you're looking at when you're talking about Perry. Elaine, do I need other permissions or anything to share? Oh, I think she stepped away.
No, you don't. There's just there's a box that's green. It says share.
Yep. So if you hit stop share on yours, there you go.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm here. I was trying to unmute. Sorry.
All good. All right. So this is essentially what you're looking at is Perry as well. They haven't broken it out yet by town boundaries, so I can't give you an overlay. But where you see all the purple lines, and let me turn off a couple things just to make it a little easier to to see. Actually, we'll leave one off. Or some polls. So you guys can kind of picture your town boundary
Right.
piece because you live there. So all of the purple lines that you see, this is what Tim and Pioneer threw together as a high level design. It's really rough. It's just a strand map. It basically is just a way of going, we will build a network across this. So everywhere you see a purple line is obviously a road. The little blue dots are what the 911 address database shows for locations within Perry. They're usually relatively accurate. Again, because it's not broken out by town, I can't do a real quick search to capture the numbers and verify it versus your house count that you guys are kind of working with, but I'm sure it's relatively accurate. But that gives you an idea of what when we're talking about mapping and things, that's what we're talking. There's no reason that Spectrum can't provide this exact same thing. It's literally just a KMZ file that's they could send it over in 2 seconds and I could upload it into a map in less. So if they're serious about talking about partnerships or anything else that involves the town committing to anything or money exchanging or anything else, the very least they should be required to provide, and I would make it a deal of talks going any farther, is provide us with a KMZ of where you have coverage and where you're planning to build it. That's kind of a basic of this type of agreement, unless they're talking about going after money on their own, in which case great, let us know what you guys are planning and we'll be happy to take your service when it comes if we want to. But that's what mapping looks like. I don't know what the thing that she said. It looks like something off of a travel brochure, for a 3rd grade field trip. I don't know.
Well, it's a very bizarre map because if I interpret it the way the legend tells me to interpret it, they're basically claiming that they service the whole town of Perry, and they don't.
Right, and I couldn't even really kind of figure out the shapes. Like at first I thought Boyden Lake was one of the outlines, but it's more of it's a boundary of the different service coverage layers, but it's not defined by anything, so it's just a mishmash. I don't think there's any useful data there personally, from my perspective with what we do, and this type of stuff is what they should be, and maybe they will be as you go on. So but this purple line thing, that gives you an idea too. Let me just see if I can make this kind of the most legible of anything else. So essentially that's what Tim provided. Ignore, I can turn off.
Right.
That's what his team went out and basically all you're doing when you do this stuff. Actually, I'll keep it. Hold on a second. Sorry, I got too many screens going. When we go in and do these things, we're simply looking at locations, and either we have databases or we're doing it based on the satellite imagery that shows houses and stuff like that, and we just create networks based on our understanding of topology. But the point is to reach these locations. Now you guys have RDOF up in this area. They took away the layer that showed the RDOF stuff. They're doing some back-end stuff, so I can't see it right now, but from my memory there were some clusters over here, some clusters over here.
Nope.
No.
No. Well, you're right. On the bottom of Boyden Lake,
Yep.
there's a fairly significant area. I can't drive your.
No, you can't. No, you can't, and that's fine. We don't need.
Okay, so it's on the bottom. The RDOF area that's on the top, and I didn't realize this. Boyden Lake is actually a shared lake between Robinson and Perry, right, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. The RDOF area on the north side of it is actually in Robinson.
Some of it's in Perry.
Oh yeah, no, all the red is in Perry in this map.
Meadow Road
Okay.
and
So that's South Meadow Road, Gin Cove Road, and that's about it.
not even all the Gin Cove Road or the South Meadow Road, just small sections of it.
That's correct. And I think I figured out why. And the why consolidated, I think, appreciated the fact that Spectrum actually does have a part of Gin Cove Road on the south end that they service. Because they go up to my neighbor, what's his name, Walt Loring's place?
Yeah.
And then it stops there. So I think what they basically did was started where that line stops and then went north. But it looks very bizarre.
Goes back to
Now I've got another one. Let me share this one. Oh, this one here. Okay, this is a slide from Melinda's first presentation, and what it alleges that it shows are the roads that Spectrum services. So if you look at it, basically it's all of Route 1. No, that's not true. It's Route 1 up to Shore Road. Then it dives onto Shore Road all the way up to Lake Road, which it has a piece of.
Ray,
And then there's a,
Ray, you might
Yes.
want to maximize your screen so people can really see that. It's very small, so yeah, if you can maximize your screen. The box next to where, right,
yeah, I've got the wrong thing I'm looking at here. Come on.
there you go.
All right. Can you see my
There.
pointer?
It's much
Can you
better.
see can you see
I-
my pointer? The little crosshair?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, so it goes down Route 1 and then goes up Shore Road, and they cover the whole of Shore Road. Then it comes back to Route 1, it does Lake Road, and then there's this little piece here of South Meadow and Golding. And then there's also something that it looks like it goes down Gleason Cove Road a little bit, and then whatever this is down here.
Cook Maha's Lane, Cannon Hill.
Is that it?
This is what Maha's Lane and Old Eastport Road.
Oh, okay, okay. So according to the map that they showed us when they first talked to us, that's their footprint. So that means that this whole area here is basically uncovered or RDOF. The RDOF seems to go about like this. And then there's another RDOF piece up here, and then Gin Cove over here. So that's the real information, isn't it, Chris?
basically, yeah. Did they have a key with that? I'm assuming the blue is their coverage areas,
Yes,
and then 268.
that's my understanding.
And how many households are you guys kind of using as your total households within Perry limits?
I think 560. Is that right, Elaine?
I'll double check that right now.
Okay.
So, and she was saying that there's only 60 uncovered. I mean, I'm looking at your map versus the locations I have, and I know I have well over 100 locations in that sort of dead spot that they're showing in the center of that map.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on the screen, they say 268 locations with access to Spectrum. And I take that to mean that there are 268 homes along these blue lines. It doesn't say what their take rate is or anything like that. They probably won't tell us that.
No, not generally.
But it's
I know for the Lake Road, yeah, that's an accurate depiction as far as where Spectrum stops at the Golding Road. But there's also an overlap. Consolidated goes past the Golden Road, and actually my residence, I'm right after Bishop Lane. we're the last residents that consolidated has available DSL to us.
Okay. Well, I think you're absolutely right, Chris, that we need to somehow get both Consolidated and Spectrum to tell us what they really are talking about.
Well, if they're using this, like if I saw this one, you know, I don't remember. My apologies, but I mean, this is essentially what we're talking about. Getting them to give it to us in a KMZ form is usually where the struggle is, which is weird because if you'll provide me with this, it's the same data, just not usable. But that kind of tells you, you know, where their footprint is and what are you talking about proposing to continue to build, and then what does that model look like if Spectrum were the partner? You know, so what are they proposing? How would they partner to build out to the unserved areas? And at least the last call that, or you know, meeting that I was here when they were there, they had both the bulk purchase model, you know, as a thing, but even that didn't really address where the construction piece comes into and how is that going to look and how's it going to, you know, play into your model.
Right, right.
CCI seems to have a sort of at least a better, you know, formed approach to what they're talking, you know, when they come to talk to potential partners. They've got a couple different models, but they're building new networks everywhere they go, essentially, because their copper, you know, it's just a dead network, essentially. So everything they build is all brand new fiber. So it's a little easier picture because they're just going to build everything. For Spectrum, that's a lot of extensions. If you get them to commit to a partnership and they're going to hold to their promise of building fiber from their existing network, everything new they build would be fiber. That would be a pretty extensive, you know, fiber footprint that Perry would get, but you would still have the copper or the blue line sections in this. You know, so you got some better served down the road, probably, you know, in reality than the others, but it would be a pretty significant fiber build of what you would increase in your, you know, in your footprint within the town boundary.
Right.
So Scotty, is where Spectrum has access to the residents of Perry, is the Shore Road where the majority of the population is for Perry?
Based on my opinion, I would have to say that's probably one of the higher areas. I don't know if that's probably the main concentration. You know, Perry's pretty spread out, but the Shore Road would be definitely one of the more concentrated ones.
Okay.
Scott, do you know if is that accurate that Gin Cove Road doesn't have cable? Because that's a relatively dense area for a small. I mean, I guess relatively speaking.
That I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm actually building a house down there, and I couldn't tell you.
Well, I can tell you they don't have it where I live, and I live pretty much in the middle of Gin Cove.
So Elaine just messaged that she's showing 314 homes.
Where are you getting that information? That's like incredibly
Okay.
high.
Oh, hold on 1 second. So it's
I think it's funny.
314 households, 527 housing units. That's the US Census. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the sharing, and now I'm going to share my screen so you can actually see it. Okay. So right here in a nutshell is the town of Perry. And so there's 500. Now, the important part to remember is with census data is a household is folks that live there year round. Housing units, 527. That could be seasonal. That could be houses that no one has lived in 10 years. It's just vacant. So seasonal houses are considered vacant like right now I'm at my camp in Alexander. And so I can't do a census saying that I live in Alexander and Eastport. So I am considered a household in Eastport. My camp in Alexander is considered a housing unit, but it's considered vacant. So because I don't live here year round. So that is from US Census, and that is from the 2020 decennial census.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2020 commitment book right now
Okay.
from the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. Okay.
Elaine, what was the link? And then you said KMZ map. I'm not sure what you were sending.
Oh, I was just reminding of what you were saying. You were asking or suggesting that they ask Spectrum for a KMZ map.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so I just popped it in there for memory.
Yeah, and again, with that, that second map that Ray brought up, yeah, I mean that pretty much, if that's what they're saying their footprint is, that kind of tells you the story. I would think that maybe there's some extensions they're not accounting for because the numbers are varying by probably more than what her numbers were saying. If they're showing only 60 unserved homes and they've got any recent data, which I've been led to believe that they've done walkouts recently of Perry, Eastport, and Spike. They have planned network upgrades, whether that's real or not, whatever. But they should have up-to-date data versus something that was 10 years ago. If that's the case, then they know down to every household exactly how many service locations there are. They do what's called a TAM analysis, total addressable market, and they go out and count potential targets. So if they are saying 64 and whatever they're picking of those households versus housing units, I'm sure that definition can vary, but you have to figure somewhere in the middle. And that wouldn't be that. Based on that map they're showing, there should be more than 60 uncovered. So I'm guessing that map is probably outdated versus what's actually out there for their extensions and coverage area. So an up-to-date KMZ, if it differs from that one that she sent, would be helpful, but not a big deal.
Sorry, I was muted. Serviceable locations, that could be a vacant lot, right, Chris?
Anything that's generally what we look at is anything that has ever had and could have again, could physically support a power drop, is generally what we target. That means that there's a pole infrastructure in place, so it doesn't have to be built with pole lines. Generally, a power meter is what a cable company determines, because you can have, say, a house and then a garage apartment, and the garage apartment has its own power meter. A cable company is going to charge you for two locations by their standards, whether that ends up being the case or whatever. So that's what we generally look at from an industry when we're looking at it, and we don't care if they're seasonal, not seasonal, whatever. It's a potential subscriber location. Cable companies love seasonal customers.
So what should we be asking for then?
Well, if you're asking me, I'm trying to get an idea of where you guys are, and what you're starting to get as a vibe, from the people you're talking to. Where are you in whatever amount of community interaction you've been able to get, before you go wholly into this. What do you really think is the likely capacity for the town? Are they going to be willing to pony up what would be needed if you go the MCA route? Or are you looking for a partnership with somebody that's just looking to continue to expand their service, which would likely be a Spectrum one? And you can certainly do like a partnership with Spectrum, potentially wouldn't cost Perry a dime. because they should be applying for Reach Me grants or just doing a build out based on community response, things like that. Now, again, it's not necessarily the product that you're shooting for, but that's like the low cost end of a a project in a prospective build. So if your community has really no tolerance and we are not looking to have any debt or borrow, that's where you're kind of at on that one. If you're on the side of we want a fiber network, then that takes a different level of effort and a direction and pursuing an MCA grant, because that's really the only path that most towns are going to have the ability to afford that type of a structure. And if you're too early in the game to even have a feeling for that, then exploring all of them as you are is fine as well. But what you're doing with the X and Y axis and the charts and starting to narrow it down is exactly the right path. And those questions that you have on the list are perfectly fine. You'll start sorting through what each of the three have, right? And it's essentially three. You have CCI, you have Spectrum, and then you have a fiber build that you're funding yourself, whether that's a DBU, a Pioneer, an Axiom, whatever. It's the same model, just different players. So those are kind of the three things that you're in, and which bucket is the one that is most suited is your first kind of decision making, in my opinion, for a smooth project to start talking about. Trying to present all three to everybody is a little tough. That's going to take a lot of community interaction and education, but you can also just put materials together that kind of lay out, hey, these are our three options, this is kind of where they cost. You're a ways away from RFP and things like that, but it doesn't take that long to get there. And that's an easy way to kind of get numbers associated with stuff. Without the planning grant piece, it's a little tougher. It kind of sucks, because Perry is a prime example of what that program's really meant for. I wish they would push up the opening dates for another round of that. But Elaine is great with already finding some alternative funding sources to do the same things, whether those are good fits or not. That's again conversations you're gonna have to have. It's hard to move through this unsupported. It's just really hard. So what you're doing with the charts and things like that, I think you're on the right path. With the capacity you have, just being able to present to yourselves and to your town folk, your council, whatever, those options, and with some clearly but brief bullet points of what you're talking about, is kind of the starting point. And whatever
Agreed.
pitches they give you, I'm happy to help you kind of frame what they're saying as far as any technical interpretation and things like that. And I'm not biased on one model versus the other. I think whatever suits a town and provides the solution that everybody's happy with is what's best.
Same here.
Perry is in an interesting situation. I mean, Sapaic and Pleasant Point, if they're both looking for fiber optic, it sort of has to come through Perry, I believe. So how do we take advantage of that? Because I would think that that's an important issue that maybe the residents of Perry could take advantage of that, and with the help of Sapaic and Eastport, maybe we can make it happen without any cost to the residents of Perry.
Well, and I haven't looked at the 3-ring binder maps, and I wouldn't have enough visibility to find out where the nearest leasable fiber is. As far as I know, the 3-ring binder, I mean, you guys are right there on Route 1. I'm trying to remember which map I have the actual outlay of the 3-ring binder. I don't know why they don't have it in MCA's Metro. You would think that would be.
I thought Pioneer showed it coming right. I mean, they showed their fiber.
Yeah, and that they may be showing the 3-ring binder, essentially First Light. Everybody leases fiber from all these backbone providers and things like that. So I don't think getting access through Perry, kind of like I'm sorry, I can't remember the other gentleman that's been on the committee meetings that was talking about, fiber passes right by his home and he has GWI or something available. That's what they're talking about. Those fibers are there. So it's not like somebody has to build anything coming through fiber. They're just going to lease fiber from the existing backbone that's there and build off of it. That's generally the model. Unless for some reason, like if Tim at Pioneer had an asset, a fiber asset, not too far away that he could extend off of, then you would build that network, but that's unlikely to be the case. So the fiber's kind of already there to start building. You just kind of lease a couple of fibers from First Light, that becomes the feed to your cabinet, and then you build everything out from there.
Does anybody know who the Perry School has for fiber?
I talked to Penny Johnson. She just said that they're all set for internet. I didn't get any details as far as who's their ISP, how do they get it, what's their speeds, or anything like that. Am I dead?
Nope.
No, you're there.
I
You're
think
there.
it's Scott. I think Scott's frozen.
Well, I got out of the video there. I'm looking to see who Perry School has for their fiber network.
So schools and libraries do get, generally they do get fiber paid for. I can't remember the main library and schools, something like that. It's actually like on your bill. It's I can't think of the name of it. I'll Google
Yeah.
it.
And
Right now.
MCA is going to be partnering with them if they're awarded the middle mile project. Also, all of these different fiber assets are going to kind of get sort of leverage to do these things on the backbone side, but that's always off.
Did you find what you wanted, Scott?
No, I'm in a group chat with the teachers at the school, and I remember having a conversation about it, and I was just looking to see if I could find it, and I couldn't. But I do, but I can't remember who the provider is, though.
Right.
Paul Grimshaw, who was also in these chats early on, stated that he had GWI. I do know that the school is just up the road from him, but they're not GWI. They had a different company. Just for conversation purposes, that's all.
Right.
So we're really not in the driver's seat as far as Perry going. They don't necessarily, meaning the other towns, need our approval or our assistance to have their fiber optic signals run through our community.
Not really, in terms of one having to kind of work a deal with the other and things like this. Same thing with Eastport. If Eastport wanted to build a network and Spike wants nothing to do with it, Perry can just build through, because those easements already exist. Now sometimes there's some cost savings by those partnerships,
Right.
but again, because nothing's really getting built through Perry, it's coming off that intersection, where Spike and Perry sort of meet. That's kind of where the fiber is, to the best of my knowledge, barring unavailability of dead fibers. So they could, Perry and Eastport might be able to reduce some costs by splitting that big long stretch to some extent and putting a cabinet in the middle. Same thing when you come to an actual build, if the cabinet is located closer to Perry, and everything's balanced out, each of you would share some cost savings, because that main fiber run and the construction of cabinets and things gets consolidated and shared. But as far as passing through another town, there's not, in your case, not a lot of efficiency or cost save that I can see.
Are other towns doing similar things to what we're doing, like Alexander, Pembroke, Charlotte? Are other towns doing the same thing right now, trying to chase grants to get fiber optic?
Yep, all over the state of Maine and pretty much all over the country.
Yeah, so I will say Alexander, for example, joined DBU. So right now, and I could miss some, so right now, DBU is Callis, Baileyville, Indian Township. I believe Cooper is in the process. Alexander is being connected right now. I'm probably the only person without it right now. Because it's either CCI or DBU. So I'm not promoting DBU at all. And who else? Charlotte. So Charlotte has a huge RDOF area, and they did apply for Connect the Ready. They were not awarded. They have an enormous amount of RDOF area, and so with other communities, Lubec has partnered with Axiom. They also applied for a Connect the Ready grant. It was not awarded for a variety of reasons. A lot to do with spectrum presence and RDOF areas. So, but yeah, all over, Chris is right, all over the state of Maine. It's not just Perry, Eastport, and Sabayak. Definitely not.
And I'm waiting on the sort of final pieces of the licenses that I have to have in order to be able to view some of these other things. By the time I get them, actually, I think they're going to be able to make this stuff shareable publicly. But right now, it's governed by licenses. I'll be able to see sort of the actual locations by speed and by coverage and different things, whatever. And then once I have access to that, I literally within 15 minutes, I can kind of tell you, based on the FCC mapping and all that kind of stuff, what percentage of your households are below the thresholds. And that's the key to the grant determination as far as MCA is concerned, and most of them, to be honest. If you get below a 50% coverage rate of broadband, then you're in eligible territory, and that's probably going to get more competitive as it goes. So Perry actually you're probably close, but the RDOF piece, as you guys know, is sort of that equalizer that takes some of that away. But and I would not get excited about this. There is some grumblings that there is wording in the NOFOs that the state, essentially, the MCA, could petition to have a waiver. And you're welcome to start looking into this on your own stuff. Leave my name out of it. But there's some things in there that I don't know how much heat it would take from the populace of Maine to get people to start pushing that, because you're talking about a lot of money in some big companies' pockets, and I don't know how much traction that would get. And also, it's going to be lawyers' interpretations of what those clauses really mean. But there is wording in the NOFOs about that, and NOAA and NTIA, the governing bodies of this stuff, if they put it in their NOFO, they're the governing thing. So there's something there, but I don't know what it is yet. So don't let it factor into your stuff, but things like that may come into play if Maine gets serious about trying to achieve what they're talking about, because that's the only way some of these projects are going to get done.
So do I understand you correctly, Chris, that once you get those licenses, you'll be able to basically create for Perry what Mission Broadband showed this week to Eastport, kind of the bubble, the bubble plot where the unserveds are one color and the least served another color, and they serve and so on and so forth. And then they can come up with the table that says, okay, 7% is unserved and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's essentially just data analysis on what's already there, and some of it kind of comes and goes, depends on what day you log in, whether you can see certain things and stuff. But and they're also, again, their MCA is working on their licenses also. They have to have similar licenses on a larger level, and the companies and the licensors of this stuff is understanding that they need to make this more public available. So I think MCA is going to be able to start making it so that you as a town can just click on this data and see it. There's no reason to have to go through somebody like me. And in worst cases, towns are paying people to be able to just show them a picture of what they're looking at, and that's kind of dumb.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it seems that's a key piece of information, because if it rules out possibilities, then we need to know that at a fairly early point, I think.
And the one place where I'm hoping that you're actually going to benefit from the missteps that sort of happened so far with the Connect Ready and things like that. There's a lot of people talking that there should be sort of a really quicker process for determining whether a town or a community or a couple of towns, a joint, you should be able to triage that pretty quickly and go, yep, they're a viable candidate. Nope, they're not a viable candidate. These pieces are starting to be a little easier to view. And rather than let a town like Perry get 6 months into this and everything on a path that may not work, I think they recognize the need to be able to just step in and say, hey guys, looked at your data, you're likely going to be successful going down path B, whatever they determine those paths are, but be able to point you in the right direction. So you're not asking exactly these questions, well, what do we do now? You're doing the right things, but some of it might be going down a path that, may not be obtainable if RDOF isn't, able to be pulled off. So why spend the resources doing it? I wish I could give you real quick answers, but they're not there yet. So you're kind of stuck doing what you're doing.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, the level of education you're getting on what's out there and, being able to speak to it intelligently is huge. That's a bonus to your town that, most of the towns that tried to do this earlier didn't have. This level of information and research and expertise that you're building as a committee is a really big help to what you're trying to do, regardless which direction you go in.
I really appreciate those words, Chris.
So Ray, when you're engaging with Melinda, what's sort of where is that at? What are they sort of proposing, or what would they like to put in front of you, or are they leaving that in your court right now?
I'm not sure it's in our court. She agreed to do two things. One was to provide us with the map that we have, which is of, I don't know, marginal value, I think.
Yeah, there'll be other sources of that same data that we can get much better, actual
Okay.
what they're trying to do. I'll kind of take care of that for you guys. I'll figure out a way for you to be able to view that a little, more usable.
I mean, I need a better definition from her about what she's talking about, if she really is talking about some sort of an ownership model and partnership with Spectrum, because as you said, Chris, that seems to be a new idea to you.
I'd be really interested in what she says with that. If it's anything other than no, I misspoke or you misunderstood or whatever, I'd be incredibly interested to hear that.
That's a valid answer. I accept that. If that's the case, I want to know.
Yeah, exactly. And CCI, I mean, I think it's pretty clear where CCI is, because again, if that's not involving grants, I don't know, sort of what they can offer you, because they're not offering to fund a build. There again, they can go out and apply for Reach Me grants, other things. What you're going to start seeing, because the state has had to realize that some of the things they were hoping were going to be private or municipal or community builds and things like that simply aren't going to happen. Whether it's through just the sheer heavy lift that it takes to do these things, or the eligibility based on other providers or RDOF or whatever it might be. So it's starting to take a different route, and the models for partnering with a CCI, a Spectrum, I think there's going to be more resources provided to towns like Perry, Eastport, whoever is in that boat. They have to shift the consulting and the advising to how do you partner with a large conglomerate. And that's really what you're talking about. that's not to say that there's no chance for, for Perry to continue on this road for municipal. It's just that if that's not the path, you need a different set of resources than what they're putting out to you folks so far.
You see my shared screen? This is from Simon's presentation to us. These are the funding structures, and he called one the grant funded, which sounds like Consolidated owns everything. And I would assume that if they take that route, they would go for the Reach Me funding and all that. But the second one is what he called bond funded, where the town owns the backbone, CCI owns the drops and ONTs, whatever that is. And CCI is the operator for the town's infrastructure. That one there is very muddy. I don't really know what that means, what it would cost Perry. And I sent him some questions today to try to get some clarification, but that's what they're proposing to us. I mean, obviously the simpler one is the grant funded. They pay for everything, they own everything, we get it.
Yeah, and like for examples of what that looks like, Premium Choice Broadband was a big player in the first round,
Right.
and as was Axiom, but Premium Choice is more of a closer comparison. They went out and applied for Connect Ready grants for towns that were either adjacent to their existing footprint or they already had a partial footprint on, and they were awarded those grants. They are a privately held incumbent cable fiber optic provider. They're not partnering with the town. They generally were supposed to get letters of support and things like that. And I have no idea if that went on or not. And in most of those places, if you look at where Premium Choice does business, it's, Jackman, Rockwood, Greenwood, Scottsdale County and stuff like that. So they're not real dense areas. Again, he built his network on the more rural areas. So he's going to extend that out as a grant funded thing, but he still continues to own everything. The benefit to the town is that where they didn't have anything or a subpar provider, they will now have a fiber to the home network, and they just continue to pay their cable bill. And I haven't seen any backlash in the towns that he was awarded, not to say there's not, but that's what that model looks like. There's kind of no input or activity or burden on the town. And for an awful lot of people, that's a really attractive option. Hey, can you just knock on my door when the network's built and I'll hook up. So that's what that model looks like in a real level, and CCI would just be the provider. That's a pretty gravy route. What you don't have is you're not ending up with an asset in any way. You don't have control over the costs. It's generally a proprietary network. There's no choice of ISPs. They are the ISP.
Right.
So those are kind of some of the downsides, and things like cost can still be a barrier if that provider decides they're going to just maximize profit and really raise their rates. So that's the downside to it. In his bond funded model, I agree with you. I'm not 100% sure how much value is in that. I think they're just kind of putting that out there. Like, if you wanted, this is another route. You would essentially own just the big cables on the telephone poles, and they own everything that connects a customer. The ONT is optical network terminal. It's kind of what gets mounted on the side of the house. So essentially everything that you connect to the system to make the customer active, that's theirs. And that's not a bad, it's an interesting model. I've never really seen it in play anywhere personally, so I don't know, where the downsides are. But it does, kind of give some options to a town that really wants a fiber network. They want some ownership, but they aren't eligible for a grant. You've seen the cost. I think you started seeing some of these, estimates. The bill of materials for Perry alone, was, probably $2 million plus on the conservative side for that build. That's a big bond. I don't know where CCI steps in because they're benefiting from it, if they're going to share some of that debt load or not. I didn't really hear that piece of it, so I don't. it's hard to picture a scenario where that's going to make a ton of sense for smaller towns.
Okay.
That did, but again, you'd have to see the financials on it to see, what they're really proposing.
Well, hopefully Simon will provide some light on that, because right now I'm in the dark. We'll see. Well, my expectation of a short meeting just kind of went to hell. Are there any other things that we need to bring up at this particular point? John, Scott, Elaine?
I
Nope.
think we're still gathering information. I mean, I don't think we're ready to request a grant. I don't think we're ready to present anything to the town right now.
Well,
Personally, I'm still in the gathering information process.
me
And I
too.
think it makes sense to invite the folks you've talked to, whether, Axiom and all of them that you've spoken with, to invite them back again, to drill down the questions, the information you're really looking for. As you're still gathering information and learning more, it makes sense to me, just like Spectrum, Melinda offered to come back with some technical folks. They're willing to come back and talk to you. So I
And-
would
and-
suggest
and-
it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think as the more we see, the more questions we have. And I mean, like Spectrum is very interested in us as a town. Is it? I know it is. It's the money. I mean, it's the grant money that's out there. Before all these monies became available, it didn't seem like there was much conversation or interest. But now, they seem to, interact with us a lot more. So is
Yep.
it the money?
It's pretty important.
Yeah, well, and again, not to paint any of the companies and stuff in a evil light, whatever they're doing, what businesses do, but previously there was no business case. It's not that they're mean. There was literally no money in building these areas. It
Right.
generally will cost you more money to maintain the network than you're actually generating in revenue from the subscribers. That's why those minimum homes passed per mile, ROI calculations exist. The reason they can do it now is because if somebody's going to subsidize your infrastructure for you, sure, I'll build it, we'll do it, we'll maintain it, we'll hook up customers, because we didn't have to shell out that money. So now it's just an increased value to the asset I own, and I'm getting more revenue. It's kind of a no-brainer for them. It's just a smart business decision.
Sure. Well, it looks like we're pretty much talked out. Thank you very much for some really good discussions. I'll work on the spreadsheet. I'm not going to promise it by next week, but I'll promise it by maybe a couple of weeks. I do have a little vacation. I'm going to Bar Harbor next weekend, not this one.
So you're not going to Bangor with John?
I'm not going to Bangor. He didn't
Oh.
invite me.
There's only so much room at the Comfort Inn. Sorry.
It's okay.
And Chris, thank you very, very much for
Oh, you're
attending and your
And
wisdom.
Ray,
And
oh, sorry, Lynn. Ray, as you start putting that spreadsheet together and stuff, technical questions or whatever, even the things like you were asking about, what does she mean by service locations, whatever, any of that stuff, just send me a bullet list of questions, and I can just answer it and send it back to you and stuff. If it's easier,
Perfect.
have them reach out.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help, Chris.
No worries.
Need to
too.
open buy you a dinner pretty soon.
It's quite all right. Thank you.
Good job, Chris. I mean, really some great information.
Well, hopefully we find you guys at least a path to get, a solution for what you're looking for. There's something out there, no matter what. I do believe that even if maybe they have to take a roundabout route to get there, the state is true in their intent to try to provide solutions to the most, kind of needy communities that aren't going to get built any other way. And that's what, this area is supposed to be for. I think Perry is a great example of it. Eastport is too. So this area is going to be, be left with a legacy system and unserved areas if we don't find a solution to solve both. And I think it will happen. It's probably just not going to be as smooth and easy and quick as what everybody would hope for.
Quick question for Scotty. When we do have the town meetings on this subject matter, do you think we'll have a heavy turnout?
Generally, in my experience, anytime you have a town meeting, it's a very, very low turnout unless it's going to affect people's wallets.
Okay.
And that's huge.
Right.
People come out without knowing any information. They just hear the taxes are going up or something's going to cost them money and totally walk in there being completely oblivious to what's going on and just want to be heard, just want to stand up and get their two cents in. But
Mhm.
I know for like the school meetings, for the funding, the ones I attended, there was always a very good turnout.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's our goal to find good quality internet or fiber at the best the best price. That's our end game. I mean, if we do our job, then the rest should be easy, in my opinion.
Right. But I think it is our job to present, the number one choice rather than trying to get the community to agree on something that they don't know anything about.
That's how this works. I mean, we have budget committees that do the same thing. We propose a budget and the town vote. It's the same exact thing. We just got to come up
Right.
with the best fit, or you do.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, are we done?
You can put a fork in me. I'm done.
Okey doke. Motion
Thanks,
to
everybody.
adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay.